All right, so the protractor postulate. So if we have a ray OB, so here's OB, right? And then we have a point, like in this case, point A on one side of OB, and that A could be anywhere, right? Here in the picture, you see it there, but A could be over here, it could be over here, right? Anywhere, okay? So A is just some point on one side of OB, and so if I draw a ray from O to A, okay, and form an angle with OA and OB, then the ray OA can be paired with some number from 0 to 180, right? So I can associate some number from 0 to 180 with the ray OA, right? And why 0 to 180? You might ask, and remember that's because a straight angle is 180 degrees, right? So if I have a ray somewhere on one side of OB, it's going to be somewhere, between 0 and 180. Okay? All right. And remember, it's any real number from 0 to 180. So a lot of times we'll have whole numbers with degrees, but you could have a decimal or fraction. So as long as between 0 and 180. So we can use a protractor to measure angles. So if we have this situation here, the measure of angle COD, similar to measuring lines, right? The measure of angle COD is the absolute value difference of the measure of ray OC and the ray OD. Okay, so here in the wording, so we're using C for the real number that corresponds with ray OC, and lowercase d for the real number that corresponds with OD. So if you subtract those values in absolute value, take the absolute value of the difference, then you get the measure of that angle. Okay, so that's how we measure angles. And so practically, you're just going to be using your protractor and then finding the value of those points or those rays, and then you can just subtract the difference, right? And normally we'll start at 0, and because it's easy to subtract with 0, right? So anything minus 0 is itself, and so a lot of times we'll just position our protractor so that that one of the rays is at 0. All right, so here are some examples. So find the measure of each angle. So here's where just kind of knowing how to name angles comes in handy, right? And so angle ADB. So remember, D is the vertex, right? And you can see D is the vertex of all these angles, so makes that aspect somewhat trivial. But anyway, ADB. So I go from A to D to B, right? So I'm talking about that angle there. So so notice how there's two sets of numbers on this protractor, right? One goes from 0 to 180 counterclockwise, right? And the outer set goes from 0 to 180 clockwise. And so depending on what side one of your rays is on, you can use either one, right? So since I'm going from A to B, or since A is on the horizontal, I'm going to use this group of numbers, right? So I'm going to start with this 0. So B, I go to 10, 20, and then I'm between 20 and 30, right? And each of these short tick marks measures 5, right? Halfway between 0 and 10, so 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and so forth, right? So B is at 25, and A is at 0, so 25 minus 0 is 25. So 25 degrees. All right, number 11, FDE. So for FDE, let's see, FDE. All right, so this time I'm going to use this 0, right? I'm starting on the right side, so I'm going to use the 0 here because that's where DF is. And so E is positioned between 30 and 40, and so 35, right? 35 minus 0 is 35. All right, so number 12, BDC. So this time, BDC, so now we're measuring an angle that doesn't start at 0, right? So I could go either way. I could use the outer group of numbers, or I could use the inner group of numbers, right? I'll use the outer since I'm starting at B. So so remember, B is at 25, so I'm going to do 25. This location here is at 25. And then C is at 80, right, on the outer. So I'm just going to do 80 minus 25 and get the absolute value of that, right? And so that equals all right, so 55 degrees. So that's how you measure angles. Pretty self-explanatory, hopefully. Let's practice a little bit more. So CDE. So here's CDE. All right, so we're going from 80 to E was at 145 if we're using the outer values, right? All right, so we do 145 minus 80, and we get, oops, you guessed it, 65. All right, and remember, technically we're doing an absolute value, but if you do the larger number minus the smaller number, you'll always get a positive, right? So, but make sure your answers for these are all positive. All right. So, and then another thing you can think about while you're measuring these is think about, okay, are these acute, right, obtuse, or straight angles, right? All right, so let's leave it at that. Let me know if you have any questions. But I think that that's done enough examples to get you on your way for this.